Hello, and welcome to Last Attempt, a World of Warcraft Guildcast. I'm your host, Squirrelthug, and with us again is Templar Ivanhoe.
Hello.
This week, we have a bonus episode that we're bringing to you. This is going to be a retrospective look at the War Within, patch by patch, sort of going through the seasons, taking a look at everything this game has brought us for this expansion. And the regularly scheduled episode will cover a prospective look at midnight. And we'll be covering a lot of news and such from the last week within that because all the news is relevant to midnight this week. So, to start us off, wanted to ask our guest here if they wanted to share their maybe some stats from their Raider IO, the War Within recap. It was a very interesting recap. I think a lot of companies have been doing sort of annual recaps at the end of the year near New Year's. It's really interesting that Raider IO does this at the end of an expansion, which is really cool to see. Are there any stats that really stood out to you?
Um, I think the first one actually is pretty surprising. Just a little background is that wasn't able to really do M plus a whole lot for this expansion or the War Within, I should say, just because of a lot of external things IRL going on. But I was surprised. Let me see if I can get the exact number because unfortunately you can't like fast forward the way the thing really works. But I think it was here it is that I've spent 2 days, 18 hours, and 1 minute running keys. Um, and again, wasn't really able to do as many this expansion, so I was actually surprised that almost 3 days worth just being active in keys. And I will say most of that was banging my head trying to get a trinket in Stone Vault. Um, that was a real big to do, and if memory serves, I don't think I ever got it. So uh, you know, that's a bit
Was
embarrassing,
it
but
available from the turbo boost?
if memory serves, no, it was during like was Stone Vault, I think was
Oh, that was
season
like season
one.
one.
Yeah. And it just never dropped for me. And according to the stats, I did run at least 30 of them. And uh so, it wasn't exactly a fun time, but it wasn't exactly a bad time. But I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think Stone Vault was actually my very first Mythic Plus.
Oh, okay.
I had never done it before. I never even looked it up or even knew that Mythic Plus was like an extra difficulty in the game. And I got into the War Within, sort of joined up with the guild, and um, right at the beginning of the expansion. So when Mythic Plus opened up, because it doesn't do that
Right.
initially, right? Um, there was a group that got together, and the last time that I had felt that level of difficulty was when I played Elden Ring. And
Mm.
dude, it was only a Mythic Zero, but with the gear that we had and my inexperience, we died a lot. It was a lot of fun though.
Yeah, probably the uh some of the closest calls, like, when let's say we're doing Lumathar, which we'll probably be touching on during the toward the end of the podcast. But similar to doing some of the most difficult mythic bosses, when you get that closest call, whether it's like you just hit the plus 10 or plus 11 by X many seconds, there's that real real adrenaline boost and thrill that you get that the M pluses really. I don't know. It's just something about them that you can get them, but with just 5-person group.
Yeah, I I think the difficulty level of, especially with it scaling, I think is probably the most interesting part of the Mythic Plus system, is that it's almost like this unlimited ceiling for people who are really trying to get the most out of the game. Like there are some people who really want a difficult, you know, level to reach, right? Like there are players
Hmm.
who pride themselves on being able to do the hardest difficulty that World of Warcraft has to offer. And Mythic Plus just sounds like it's just the perfect answer to what a lot of players want. And I think it was a Legion feature, right?
Yeah, if memory serves, because when I was on in Legion, I didn't. There was a point where it didn't start in Legion. That is to say, at the start of the X Pack, it was I think about the middle of it or so. And whenever I first did it was like you. I didn't know what was going on, and it was either upper or lower Karazhan. I can't remember, and it was the remade version. And let me tell you, going through a as a tank into Karazhan on a Mythic Plus as your first key um, s- wasn't a pleasant experience because that place not only already hit hard and was already confusing enough. Now you have to time it and you have to make sure you're doing enough DPS and
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 that was
all
new to
that stuff.
everyone.
Yeah, right. Um, it was a real trial by fire. But yeah, since Legion, it's been in the game, and I think overall it's just been getting better and better.
Yeah, I think Mythic Plus has been, I mean, in my experiences, only with the entirety of the War Within expansion, but it's still, you know, I'm kind of a noob when it comes to Mythic Plus. My only experience is this expansion, so really just the Zaltath affixes and kind of how those played out. And I've only healed, so I haven't really done any of the other roles. A couple times, but not enough to really make um, I don't know, much of a difference in my understanding of the system outside of
Right.
just healing. You know, all when there are certain affixes that I have a talent that'll allow me to do something like um, it's like disorienting roar or something. Druids get it, and I almost never spec into it, but it's just an AOE. I mean, there's a lot actually. There's a lot of answers that druids have for those, but I usually take that one because it's got a pretty good range. You know, so those kinds of affixes, I always thought they were fun, but I know a lot of people feel different about them, and I think you're right. We're gonna get a completely different experience in Midnight, given the new add-on situation. And you were mentioning Lumathar. One of my Raider IO stats showed that one of our kills on Mythic was 20 out of 20 dead, and we still got the kill. So
Yes.
I remember that one.
Yeah, definitely.
That was a tough
Um,
boss.
it was such a. I mean, it's one of those bosses where, people because I've seen no, I don't know what I want to say. The the creator of DBM was sort of lamenting that um, even though they took out weak auras, etc., and they did all these changes, he was sort of lamenting the fact that we're almost um, at the point where we were before they removed the weak auras and things. Now, I don't really agree with that because from what we've experienced going from Lumathar with weak auras to a point where Lumathar, we don't need them. Um, I'm just very, very glad we're done with this era of WoW where we have to be um, this twitchy, highly reactive, almost Herculean effort in trying to time things or do this or do that. Um, and Lumathar was one heck of a boss. Just have to have your head on a constant swivel, and especially for us tanks, because and I'm sure Scourge would agree. Having to tilt your camera in the arena was next to impossible because it would constantly bump up the wall, and so you couldn't really see much of anything. So then you'd have to be constantly moving your camera, then constantly paying attention to the boss, what it was doing, and trying to call things out, and it was just a mess.
Yeah, I think that boss is pretty difficult to just get your camera really in a good spot. There's a lot of things that are happening, and opposed to most normal gameplay in raid fights, you can just move and your camera follows you as you move, and that's good enough. Like as you move through mechanics and such, but it's such a small arena, you're stationary most of the time, and so your camera has to move because things are still coming at you, but it's all converging into the center point, and it was difficult. A lot of overlapping mechanics, and especially on Mythic, things just hit so hard. But I think that boss, because it was the last one that we really cleared before the pre-patch. So as far as like the Mythic bosses that we genuinely progressed on, Lumathar was the last one, but I think the most satisfying kill. I think I was more excited about killing Mythic Lumathar than any other boss that we cleared.
Oh, definitely. And even before I came to second attempt, season one, and then I was here most of season two for second attempt. Um, but even season two, same thing. Yeah, it's just clearing Lumathar was just such an achievement. It's a real pain in the butt, I can tell you that.
Yeah. So for the I don't know if you've got your final panel pulled up on that Raider IO stat thing, but what was your War Within identity? Kind of had a little heat map diagram.
Let's see. Let me see if I can pull that one up. Uh,
It should be the second to last one. Last one says something about midnight, and the second to last one
Here it
would
is.
be
My
your
War
war.
Within identity is a Mythic rating specialist, which
Nice.
that includes
That means
top.
that you specialize in tanking.
Yes, sir. And I can tell you the thing I do like the most is just tanking. I think it's the most fun in the game, um, and um, uh, and I think there's something about not just tanking but healing where um, I don't know. There's it's not just that it's a specialty. It's like, for example, tanking. You have to watch yourself. You have to watch where you're putting the ads. You have to manage your own health. And healing sort of the same way. You got to watch where you're moving. You got to watch the tank's health, the rest of the raid's health. And I just think there's something really just not just impactful but fun about that. You're the pilot or co-pilot, and really trying to help and steer the raid together.
Yeah, I do feel like in a healer role, and especially when as a tank, I think tank is the de facto conductor, right? Like they're the first ones in the
Hmm.
room, they're the ones at the head of the pack. They're always the ones that are engaging in nearly every fight. Sometimes hunters will pull trash, but you know, um, it's always the tanks. So it's kind of like a de facto thing. But as far as roles go in a raid, I've always felt like I've contributed more as a healer than as a DPS, because DPS there's just so many, and even if you're not like number one, two, or three DPS, you're in the crowd.
Yeah, and I think there's especially having a good camaraderie with everybody else on the team, as a healer or as a tank, which I think we both are, not only between each other but with the rest of the team. I think it really sort of helps pull everyone together. You know, we're sort of the glue that holds everybody together, and we help each other out. So
Yeah, I
I,
think that's there is something to that. I think there seems to be less of a like team responsibility for DPS, right? There's a lot of self
mhm.
responsibility of taking care of yourself and making sure that you do the right thing, but there is sort of an expectation from tanks and healers to be considerate of the entire raid.
Right, exactly, and to really put themselves uh, into the lion's den. Not necessarily like, for tank. Obviously, you're the guy being beat up as a punching bag, but like we said, to steer the team and really just sort of hold the line.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So, before we move into the retrospective look at the War Within, I want to announce that our guild is still recruiting. We raid from 9 p.m. to 11:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, every single week. The only exception was actually this last week because on Thursday we had the War Within sort of early access come out, and quite a bit of our guild has that. So we really just focused on leveling and kind of having fun in there. But everyone was still in Discord and chat, so we are a guild that stays active throughout the entire expansion. So if that sounds great to you, there is a recruiting channel in the Discord. Discord link is in the description. Definitely come on by. Now, I want to take us into the retrospective look for the War Within. We're going to cover everything from the beginning of that expansion to where we are right now, and a sort of big picture for the War Within. This is the 10th expansion that has come out, but in terms of like versions of the game, I believe it's a 11, right? So it's always like 11.0, 11.1,
Yeah.
and so there's like a sort of a numerology here that a lot of players had caught on to. So 12.0 is going to be midnight, and there's a significance perhaps there, or just a little bit of a fun that Blizzard likes to have. They do like to have a lot of fun in their game, which I have always loved. This expansion had launched on August 26, 2024. It is the first chapter of the World Soul Saga trilogy, which starts with the War Within, leads into Midnight, which we is now active, and then finally culminates at the Last Titan. And all this is promised to be delivered before 2030, which was how Metzen had announced it, or the promise that he had made when he was up on that stage at the last BlizzCon that actually came out, which is another point of history. This is the first time BlizzCon has skipped 2 years ever. I think they skipped 1 year because of COVID, but they still got right back to it. And there was some people had suspected that we weren't going to get another one, but in the same time that they canceled the 2025 BlizzCon, they also simultaneously announced the 2026 BlizzCon. So I think that they wanted to just put those rumors to rest immediately, even though they were canceling that 2025 BlizzCon. But that is where we had 2023. That was where we had found out about this this trilogy, which sort of it it made history, and it was a really big deal to have Chris Metzen back there. And I want to ask you, Templar, did you think that Metzen's return to BlizzCon or to Blizzard, and then sort of that big announcement at BlizzCon, did it really like live up to the hype?
I would say for the most part. Now, the reason I say the most part isn't so much that I think the War Within there was anything wrong with it. It's as we head into midnight, I'm sort of seeing where not only the story is going, but how things have gotten for the better. Um, One thing that I just again we're sort of we will be talking more about the War Within, but hear me out. um, the first thing that I really noticed with Midnight so far is once you start sort of the first part of the campaign, um, we head into Silver Moon City, and just seeing the um, just how colorful and how um, just almost mesmerizing the way it looks. And this is especially coming from someone who is always played for Alliance and has never seen or been in Silver Moon before. It's just I can see where the attention to details really come in, and and seeing that, I'm now looking on the War Within and seeing exactly how we've got here. One of the things that you can see also is like with what is it? Is it Belladar? Was that giant crystal that would
Yes,
turn
and
from?
Hellfall.
Yeah, um, that was and still is just such a like a beautiful, picturesque sort of environment, especially when Belladar is all glowing, with the light and everything. Um, and so I'm seeing how Blizzard is really, I think personally, sort of not going back to basics, but really, I think investing and really focusing um, where it should be focusing. I know you, Squirrelthug, haven't really went into too much with Shadowlands, but the it was good to an extent, especially Mythic Plus. Had a lot of fun with that, but it was very disjointed, whether it was the story or the raiding or a capital city that was a giant
Okay,
circle
so
with.
there's just much more cohesion in the War Within.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that does have to do with Metzen being back. A person who can really who knows World of Warcraft or just Warcraft in general, and knows um, just has a love for it, has a feeling for it, um, and just can be that guiding voice for it.
I think it really shows that experience matters, and Metzen had a lot of experience before he had left Blizzard the first time, and so we're actually going to cover a little bit of this later on in the podcast because it's relevant because Microsoft now owns Activision, which owns Blizzard, and so there are some of the leadership positions, people just left and at certain points in the timeline, and so having Metzen back feels really good. Now, I love that Holly's at the helm. I love that Ian has been, much more upfront and as a sort of a face for Blizzard, one of many. I love that they're doing that because before we only had a handful and there wasn't anybody else that they were ever really promoting to do interviews, to be upfront, who also, to be completely honest, Ian is very charismatic. I know that he's kind of deadpan a lot of the time and the people have their own opinions about him, but the fact that he is able to articulate everything that he does as clearly as he does in all of the interviews and deliver to us the fans everything, like every single time, I'm just always so impressed with the fact that Blizzard has more of those kinds of people, because before we didn't get that. And I think that's also one of, I mean, they had even mentioned it at some point where they were speaking about Metzen coming back and how he was adapting to this like new Blizzard who, you know, um, where they have taken people within the company and promoted them to leadership, and it has paid dividends. And so before, when he was running things before, it was really just a couple voices and that was it, which meant like the bottlenecks. And with the way that they've grown the company, we have many people who are now making creative decisions and then are still simultaneously able to come together and all have the same vision for the end goal, but without, becoming a silo and only letting, one, two, or three people get up on stage or something, or be in the interviews and such, right? Or be
Right.
willing to. And I think that it does take a special kind of person, to do that many interviews and to be the front of a company. And and there are other people too. There's some developers that actually are very active on Twitter and such, and so we're also very appreciative of all of those developers. But it seems to come from an environment that Blizzard is creating within their company, and I love to see that we're all benefiting from that design. Um, so as far as just like overall with the War Within, how does it stack up against all the other expansions that you've liked? Is there like if there's like a ranking, how close is it to number one, if at
Hmm.
all?
That's a good question. I would say so. Can't really put it on a 1 through 10 list, but I will put it
In a
um
grouping?
yeah, in a grouping. So I will put like we'll say that for example, Legion, Wrath of the Lich King were definitely S tier. Um
Okay.
um and I would say most people would probably put the War Within in B, but for me personally, I would put it in A tier. Uh, and really, it's just the reasons we discussed. There was a vision, the community was there, the players were there. Um, we had just a lot of fun. And we'll get into this. Just the raids were creative, and I mean, going from Narubar down to Undermine was just insane. And then from there, the epicness that was Dimensius as a not just as a boss fight, but just the all devouring and just how large he was going through Mana Forge. It, I just think everything was just very solid and just was great.
Yeah, actually, so for me, if I had to rank these, the War Within is actually going to be really high on the list, and the reason for that is uh, ever since Wrath of the Lich King, or ever since I guess Cataclysm, I have not uh, participated in raiding or really any kind of multiplayer part of this MMO, which is crazy. I just did a lot of solo playing and I jumped into the game at every launch and played for several months, sometimes a year. But I would always get busy and I'd like do other things. Um, and and so with this expansion, I came back to trying to raid and just I joined a guild that was also a first since the War Within or since Cataclysm, and that was just kind of like, okay, I'm gonna step into this and see what it's like, and just sort of just the community is the game. Like the game
Right.
is fun and it's a great MMO. I love the design. I love the story, and I've been very invested in everything. I love the world discovery, being able to fly around and see all the cool things that every new expansion gives us. But for the longest time, I played it by myself, and this expansion, playing it with, initially I had joined, um, it was Shadows of Elune, and I'm still in there with a few of my characters, but this is just a very casual, fun guild that is created for a streamer, Mealsia, that I follow, and that was a lot of fun. There was a lot of like casual raids that we did every Sunday, and it was cool. But nobody was pushing content, and I wanted that. And so, that's when I went looking for something, and I just so happened on second attempt. And so this has been the furthest I've ever pushed into content. And you know, I tried out Mythic Plus at the beginning of the expansion, but that was it. I didn't really start doing it until I was raiding, with the guild, where we needed the gear and we needed to get better, and there was all these things, those requirements that come with raiding at the top end, and I've never experienced that, and it's just been a lot of fun. It's just been very exciting to. I had a friend that used to get server firsts
Oh
all the time,
wow.
and it was during Wrath, and I mean, I'm actually like even all the way past that. I'm almost every expansion. Him and his guild is just like killing it, or any guild that he ended up being in. But it's always like kind of the core group of people, and after these guilds explode. But I had never thought that I would be doing what he's doing. I always thought I was a casual player all the way through, and this expansion changed that completely for me. I've done some of the hardest content that this game has to offer, and I kept going back every week asking for more. So and it's like it's just it's the way that I like to play the game now, and playing with a community, with several communities. I just started joining guilds, and I've got like a few of them in a few neighborhoods that I'm in, and it's so much fun to really enjoy the game with other players. I think it's really important. It's great to support solo play in every way that we can. Especially with delves, that's a new thing that came with this, and we'll go over that. But this game is so dependent. Its fun factor is so dependent on community. And if you play alone, cool. But if you want to multiply that fun, you have to play with other people.
Definitely, definitely.
Yeah. So that takes us into the major features for the War Within. Want to just cover what this expansion had brought to us. And at the top of that list is Delves. We have the 1 to 4 player solo friendly PvE. When it did initially launch, it was a little bit rough to get in there with certain specs and certain classes, but they did a really good job over the course of the expansion cleaning that up. So I was really appreciative of Delves being introduced into the game, because it really does. It's just that supporting feature for a lot of different gameplay that really hasn't been supported before. We also got warbands, which was pretty amazing if you really enjoyed getting reputation, but you didn't want to do it on any other character than your main. Now everybody's benefiting from that for the most part. And they also introduced hero talents. Hero talents were, um, I think, widely accepted as like a really good feature. Most people, I don't know, have any complaints about them, and they're mostly passive, so they kind of just enhance your gameplay. And I've really enjoyed the way that they've worked out. We also got a new race, the Earthen, and there's an opportunity to unlock them, and then you can play on either faction. So that was really cool. They're just a stone dwarf. I don't like dwarves, not my thing, but a lot of players did. So that was cool. The last expansion was Dragonflight, and so the dynamic flying that was uh, attached to dragons and drakes and such in that expansion was extended to nearly all of the mounts in the game, and eventually to all of them. And now we can do sky riding instead of dragon riding on any of our mounts, which was a blast. I loved being able to finally pull out all of my other mounts and then do the same dynamic kind of flying that we were getting in Dragonflight. I thought that was a lot of fun. They also introduced cross realm guilds during the War Within. That was something that was made possible. So the only reason I'm even in second attempt right now is because they enabled that feature in this expansion. And pretty close to the beginning of the expansion, they released an arachnophobia mode, which is going to substitute any spider model for something crab-like or crustacean-like or something else. And so that's been like a really good feature, I think, for a lot of players who were worried about Ajkahet, because it is all spiders all the way down. Um, so how did you feel about delves?
For me personally, I was the same way. Like, I didn't really, again, do much like Mythic Plus, especially with alts or anything, but just going through the delves, maybe you don't want to do a dungeon, you don't want to really do uh, how do I put it in like a raid finder. If you know, you know. But you want to get some gear, maybe just, sort of end the day. You're not raiding, it's not a raid day, and you just want to have some fun. Delves were perfect. I really enjoyed them. There was quite a bit of a variety with them. Uh, I do know that we did have a couple misses, what with the underwater ones. But considering that with just how many there were, and that you weren't necessarily doing the same thing over and over again, was really great. We also had end bosses for them, especially Kaivesa for season 3. If you were able to solo her, I know I was able to with about uh, I think if I did it like 7 hours before um,
Oh my.
you weren't able to do it, and
Oh,
before
oh, I thought
pre-patch.
it took you 7 hours.
No, but it
No,
did
you
take me
were
five
cutting it
hours.
close. Oh my. So you barely made it by a couple hours.
Yeah, so but doing that was a real accomplishment, and I think they did a really good job of giving us, like you said, not, having a baby, not being able to really log in a whole lot, but still being able and wanting to progress. And Blizzard and the team that work on World of Warcraft have said, that they realize that, there are, people who still play the game, but things change, whether it's you get a job or you have a child, or I don't know, you just can't do raids anymore, but you still want to log in, you still want to play with others. Delves were a really great solution to I think a growing need.
Yes, I think the developers has specifically stated that they recognize that the player base has has grown up. They're almost mostly like the same players that have been playing for years. They have a very dedicated player base, and those same people who played in 2004 and 2005, those people, this is 20 years later, right? They're in a completely different stage in life, and they have different responsibilities and uh, different time availability. And so not all of them have the time to raid 3 nights a week for 6 hours every single night. There were some guilds who were very dedicated. Maybe they would raid 5 nights a week, you know? And when you're a college kid, you can definitely do that. When you have a family, the priorities are different. And it's really cool to see that, this game that I've been playing since 2008 has sort of grown with me and grown with the rest of the players. I think it's really it makes me believe that their promise of another 20 years of Warcraft is truly feasible.
Yeah, and I think, um, like we already said, having a team of Ian, Holly, and Metzen, um, I think they, how do I put it? I think we have a really solid um, background and a really solid vision, uh, both for, you know getting the people they need to work on the games, the correct ones, and also just listening to our feedback and really trying to uh, help us enjoy something that they themselves enjoy.
Yes, yeah, I think they've done a really good job, really great job with all of that. Especially when it comes to zone design and the storyline that we've been able to experience here, especially in whatever we had at launch. Yeah, so the Isle of Dorn, we had the Earthen, and it was we were also helping them in the Ringing Deeps. So we finished up some storylines down there with them, assisted the kobolds. We made our way into Hollowfall, introducing to us the Arathi people, which were a really cool throwback to some World of Warcraft history and some like deep lore, and the really cool Beldar crystals switching between light and void. There was some world events tied to that. Then moving into Aj Kahet, the Spider Kingdom, and in my opinion, the coolest zone in World of Warcraft thus far. I have some favorite zones for different reasons, but in for just cool factor because I love spiders so much and I love the Nerubians. It was just amazing to be able to see their kingdom because I remember really wanting to see the depths of the old kingdom of in under Northrend, and going into those dungeons was a really cool peek into how deep those kingdoms go, and like reading into the lore and understanding that the Nerubians just stack their new empire on top of the old empire, and so it just goes down and down and down into the depths of just like old kingdoms down below, which is just such a cool design, and they visually articulated that in as far back as Wrath Lich King. So being able to experience that was just something I never thought we would get. I was just really excited about that. So, so that's my answer for what I think is the coolest zone. What zone did you like the most?
I honestly would say Undermine. Again, just it was something similar to what you said. We've always known about the Nerubians and their society and kingdoms, and we always knew about the goblins and theirs, but we never were able to investigate it. And just seeing um, the dystopian uh, underground living of the goblins fully realized, and then heading into the raid where we are smacking down not just Gallywix but a giant roulette machine.
That
It
was a
was
lot of
just
fun.
yeah, and it was just such a refreshing and just visually uh, almost striking to an extent. Seeing the dirty back alleys and the noir detective stories of the
Yes,
of the goblins and the music.
the music that
Um,
tied it all together.
yes, yeah, uh,
It Undermine was it. I think actually the entire War Within. There's quite a lot of people who enjoyed it, but there was overall people who were saying that the soundtrack for this expansion has been exceptional, even with Blizzard standards.
yeah, and I would definitely agree with that. Um, I mean, and not just all of Undermine, but we got the legendary now the Demencia song. When we move from phase to phase, them yelling Demencias and all of that.
Gotta
But
gotta have that choir.
yes, sir. Um, but yeah, Undermine and just it was such a good palate cleanser. It's and not that there was anything wrong with the Nurubar Palace. It was just something so different that we haven't really explored, even though we've known about it. Some again similar to what your love for the Nerubians are.
Yes, I think players could genuinely tell that the developers were having fun with Undermined.
Yeah,
Right
yeah,
off the bat, we get the name Undermined, right?
Hmm.
And they were able to make that pun in nearly every language that they localize in. Which is amazing. Like it genuinely worked. And the way that it worked in English, it worked. They made it work. It worked the same way in many other languages, which I thought was so cool and just very impressive. And but right away there was this sort of playfulness with the expansion, and when it came out, there was this seriousness and this depth with the music, which I loved. It was always so fitting, especially in the raid. But then there was a genuine playfulness with everything that we were doing in the city, being able to use the drive system to get around, which I loved. I even had a WeakOr that played the Tokyo Drift song every single time, and I would drive for a long time. I would just drift. I just drift around the city and listen to the Tokyo Drift song. It was so much fun. But when that wasn't playing, then of course I'm listening to the, the music of the zone, and it was
Hmm.
everything about it was fun. The boss fights were fun in the raid. We're fighting a slot machine. It's just that's fun. Everything about it was fun. It wasn't even like it was a difficult boss, but it was a fun boss. Every single one of them were fun. It was just like fun first, and then we'll make it hard.
Yeah, and it was also a I would almost argue that it was sort of a like those fun bosses were and are a preview to what we're going to see without weak auras and stuff. I know for us doing the slot machine and everything that we didn't really use weak auras. At
Yeah,
most we
if we just communicated,
yeah, it's an incredible
as the good
thing. I
Lord
don't know.
Metzen intended.
Exactly. And so, we would maybe have to do a few call outs, especially Scourge, who, raid leader. But
Yeah,
overall, we weren't like caught with our pants down because we didn't have a weak or yelling at us constantly. And so, like you were saying, it was fun first, then difficulty second, and I just really think that they're um, uh, doing good on that, and I think looking back on War Within, it was just uh, excellent.
I think we got spoiled. I really enjoyed all of the initial zones. Undermine was amazing, and then we got Koresh. I'm not gonna mention Siren Isle because it's a dirt it's a dirt plot. It's a rock in the middle of the ocean. I don't know. I don't know if it counts. But
Yeah,
everything else that we got that was like genuine content like to actually do something. That was obviously like filler content. So but like the big story points that we were getting in the War Within, every single one of them was amazing. Being able to see Tazavesh in its full glory and walk around and then actually see Koresh. I've only heard about these stories, right? There's like all these places that you've only heard of in the legends, so for people who are really deep into lore, I think this expansion was just really great, and then on top of that, it was just a good expansion. um, and I think that is really good for what we're going to get, going forward. But like we were saying at the beginning of the expansion, we had season one. We got Nerubar Palace and the final boss was Queen Ansarak. And if you remember, the world first was won by Liquid, and they did that with 404 pulls on Ansarak. And Echo got second, and Method got third. And the lineup that we had in season one for Mythic, the Mythic Plus pool, which I I had only done Stone Vault one time in Mythic Zero, had a crazy time, and then I didn't really participate in the lineup. That season. I think I might have gotten some help getting like certain rating, but like it was like one time each or something. I got carried, so I didn't really do anything with that. But the pool was Arakara, City of Threads, Stone Vault, Dawnbreaker, Mist of Tyr's Scythe, Necrotic Wake, Siege of Borealis, and Grim Batol. Do you have a favorite from that lineup from season one?
uh, so I would say both. They sort of blend in together, but both of the Arakaras were good. And season one was definitely good as well. I don't know. It just was for me as a tank. It was very sort of a almost uh, mobile dungeon. Was able to get in and get out. Um, but the loot was good. I think the difficulty was good. Um, and I will say Stone Vault was another favorite, um, especially uh, just being able to. And I think this nobody really talks about this, but I think this was one of the cool things that they've continued since I believe it was Dragonflight, which is being able to use um, your professions in the dungeons. So, for example, in Stone Vault, you could go to a forge if you had blacksmithing, or I think mining as well. I can't 100% remember, but it would give you an extra buff. I think it was versatility, and that would really help on uh, the boss right next to it, where I forget his name, where he's behind a giant forge. And if you've ever done that, you know that you had to go from one corner to the next because they would activate more fire coming towards you. And trust me, that extra verse buff really, really helped.
That's, it feels like a throwback to some of the classic dungeons that had professions, profession specific things that you can pick up there or schematics that you can learn. I remember Blackrock Depths had a engineering schematic for a repair bot that you can learn if you get that far in there. So seeing professions integrated into more parts of the game, so they're not just a side quest. I like that. I like having professions really, really upfront. I've always liked it when we got bonuses. Engineering gets bonuses and such. Rocket boost and being able to have mobility option for, especially for classes that don't have a lot of mobility. These different professions have always provided something, and over the years, I felt like they've been deprioritized. But in this expansion, we're really seeing them do a lot more with professions, which I enjoy, and they did take a new look at it with housing. So that was a lot of fun to see them really just sort of investing in professions. They're not just a thing on the side. It almost for a minute started to feel like primary professions were secondary professions. Like everything was just a secondary profession. It's all optional. You don't have to, and you don't have to actually engage with professions. But I think it's worthwhile if they make professions fun.
Yeah, and really giving something for everybody to do. It's not just a goblins game, um, but being able to make decor for yourself is just super neat. And I don't know. It's just um, I'm glad we got that preview sort of at the end of the War Within. Technically the housing launches with midnight, but it also technically came with a pre-patch. But I was really happy to see that they not only came out with it early, but really listened to people's feedback about it. And I think we're in a really, really good position with that as well.
Yeah, definitely. We've got a lot to look forward to with that feature. Um, so the next thing that came, it was crazy to have almost a new patch only a month after season one started. So season one started on September 10th in 2024. And October 22nd of that same year, right on the heels of this, we got the 20th anniversary patch. And this was patch 11.0.5. It is the longest anniversary event that we had ever had. It lasted 2 months. Even when they brought that same event back the following year in 2025 for the anniversary again, it did not last 2 months. This was a lot of content. Also, in its return, we did not get a Blackrock Depths raid. We only got the LFR version. So there wasn't a possibility to just go and run in there with like your guild or anything like you could in the initial phase. And there were a few things that were also taken out when they brought it back. Players have voiced their opinions about that. And I think that we can possibly see some of those things coming back this year when that event inevitably returns. They definitely built it for the long haul, and I think we can expect to see the 20th anniversary come back every year. So anybody who didn't get those HD tier 2 sets for literally all 13 classes, didn't matter if your class wasn't part of classic, you got an HD rework of some envisioned armor that you would have had at that time. And yeah, I think it was a lot of fun. It was great. I enjoyed it, but I enjoyed it for the first month. I didn't really do much in the second month.
Yeah, I think it was a great event as well, and really they went all out with it. I mean, you could even get the Shadowlands Enjoyer title, so um, or Warlords of Draenor, but the probably the less we say about both, the better. Um, but in all seriousness, it was great. We got all, and we even got the IRL helms and swords that they get or give to the people who work at Blizzard for so many years. I forget what the how many years you have to work to get the sword or
Oh,
the helm.
yes. That was
Yeah,
cool to see. Yeah, that we were able to buy those with those time walking tokens, and they had a lot of cool transmog stuff. I thought that was really fun little thing. I'm glad I
yeah.
got those.
And I think it really, we keep coming back to Blizzard and their employees, but again, it just seemed like real love letter to us fans, that we've been playing the game so long. Now that we get the the special awards that the people who work at Blizzard get as well.
Yeah, there was definitely some symbology there, right? Like I liked to have that nod to that sort of um it's sort of like a seniority, right, in the company. You know, somebody's got one of those on their desk, you're like, "Oh, you've been here for a while." You
Right.
know? So, yeah, that was definitely really cool to see the way that that patch had played out. Is a little weird that it was sandwiched in right on top of season 1, and it's kind of integrated with season 1 in a way. And if I remember correctly, the secret event was going on about the same time, and people were working towards trying to unlock the uh, the motorcycle. I forget what it's like the fell cycle,
Yes.
incognito, incognitro.
Incognito, I think. Yeah.
Incognitro, yeah. That was a very fun experience, and I believe that overlapped with the 20th anniversary too. So we just had a ton of content right away. The expansion started off with a bang, and that led into Liberation of Undermine, or the Undermined patch for season 2. That started on February 25th of 2025, and that was patch 11.1. We got Undermine the whole city. We had the four cartels kind of divided up around the city, and they're all the cartels that we kind of gotten used to, Bilgewater and such, right? And they, if you had experience some of the stuff. Like there are certain cool things you can get from like Gadgets and some certain NPCs, and it was really cool to see those on those vendors for the Reputation Quartermasters as a sort of throwback to players who have been, you know, again, like they know about all these goblin factions and stuff for so long, but you've only really ever interacted with a few of their NPCs, and now you get to see where they live, where they're all at. Um,
Yeah, and especially the sort of the hold that Gallywix had on all of them. Seeing all the goblins and us helping them rise up and take them down was really cool. Um, Very good for
yeah, that
storytelling.
underdog story.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, that was really good. And then the integration of the black blood.
Hmm.
Then we got season 3, which brought us Metaforge Omega for the raid. We were able to see Koresh, as we were saying before, Tazavesh as well, and just being able to see the Shattered World was pretty amazing. We also got 8 bosses in Dimensius, so there was a consistency throughout each of the patches for each of these raids, we were getting 8 bosses, and Dimensius was the final boss for this raid, and he was genuinely massive. And I know that there are phase one, he's not that big, and depending on, I don't know, if you pay attention or not, but I feel like the flying portion, having to dodge the giant laser, especially if you're going after some of the extra bonuses to damage, they're kind of scattered around. It makes the flight a little bit more treacherous, but you're navigating a meteor field around a planet, around, it's just crazy, huge scale that you're able to see from a perspective that we've never had for a boss fight. This is a completely unique experience, I think.
Right, and I think also, so we have last bosses like Arthas, who we've known a lot about, who we've spoken a lot about, and then you get to you do get to see his might. You get to hear his voice. You get to actually fight him and kill him and everything. And then there's story bosses, or bosses that have a neat story, but the fights really aren't that good, or at least are a real pain in the butt, such as Sylvanas. She has a lot of backstory. She was very prominent in Shadowlands, but man, that raid fight of hers was one of the worst, if in terms of having to learn it, and then every phase that you would fail, well, that's another 10 minutes of additional going back to it. Dimensius, I feel, had the story, and had the gravitas, and also the phases weren't too long. Whether it was the phase one, or the intermission, or the platforms. It was, I feel, one of the most perfectly balanced, that it took account of people's time, their interests, as well as their ability, and I just was just great.
Yeah, I think that it was a lot of fun for the end of an expansion, and sort of just working our way up to him was pretty cool. I know that I've heard of Dimensius before in the lore, and there seems to be a lot of that in this expansion of pulling from deep lore and bringing it to the front. You know,
Hmm.
season three, we also got player housing, and while that is a midnight feature, I think a lot of people are going to associate player housing, at least its initial launch, definitely with the War Within. Because it came in the middle of season three, and it sort of captured so many players.
Yeah, it just it. How do I put it? It's just like, um, it's one of those things. Now, of course, everybody's been wanting for a long time, and we could talk about garrisons and the failed attempt that was, but as someone who, I don't know how to put it. Like, I wasn't really looking forward to the idea of houses, but I really wasn't like opposed to them. It was sort of like, if they come someday. If they don't, they don't. But it seems like both Blizzard, and more so the community, have just taken the concept and just absolutely ran with it. I mean, we can even just speak on our guilty daddy's home, who has three separate rooms, with my favorite room being um, the sort of uh, Tauren outside room with a flight griffin at the top, which is the exit for the house, which is just so incredibly, um, just such a cool idea. I don't know. And looking at the house, you just wonder, how she did it and everything. um, but they even just had a WoW community contest on Twitch with a bunch of streamers, and it's just the creativity, and just everything you can do with it's just so awesome.
Yeah, it's been a really incredible feature and a great way for people to express their creativity in the same way that they've been doing in plenty of other games so far. I remember when COVID came out, um, Animal Crossing New Horizon was the bee's knees. Everybody I knew had that game and they played it. And one of the features that I noticed a lot of people really liked was the customization of making your own space yours, your own little island yours, being able to design things and be creative. I think a lot of people are a lot more creative than maybe just the general idea is, right? Like if you
Right.
think about people who are creative, you're like, oh, well, that's just like artists or musicians and such. It's just like, so you're probably looking at maybe like 10-15% of people. No, it's way higher. It's like 80% of people are, or like 90% of people are just very creative. And I love that they've been putting more things in the game for player expression, self-expression. Um, especially with like all the changes that are coming in the next expansion for transmog that we can look forward to. So all those things are really, really good. However, there have been some bad things, some controversial things, and players overall, I think, were okay with Siren Isle, but there were a few louder minority of players that just really did not like it. I did not enjoy it, but I just didn't engage with it. It had a piece of power that was tied to it, so it almost felt like a necessity. But when I had played it and there wasn't very much engaging uh, gameplay and not allowing me to fly around the island initially and making me work for it, I just like, I sort of get it, but there wasn't anything in between. Like, there was no reason for me to actually move from one place to the next on foot. If there were things for me to do along the way or that would be helpful and not a hindrance, then I would have maybe been more accepting of it. But this is also the complaint that many players have had, where the island sort of felt empty. And I believe the developers had mentioned that it was an asset that they had built for Battle for Azeroth, and was some completely different features. So they just pulled the island and dropped it in as a filler patch, and it was supposed to give you a little bit of catch up, give you some power. Um, but I know overall it did not go over well. Um, I don't know. What were your thoughts on it? Did you actually go to Siren Isle? And did it take long for you to stop going?
I was honestly like you, just really there for the ring. Um, it was basically like a children's sandbox with a couple different action figures in it, with those action figures being a few rares that you could kill, and that was about it for the day. You killed
And
those
those three
rares.
special bosses, right?
Yeah, yeah,
But
right.
and that was it. They did have a feature where you could talk to a goblin who was standing next to a giant mech, and you would phase into a version of the island that had a storm just nailing it, and you would get into the mech, and you can over time that phase had its own progression. So the more you did that phase, week after week after week, it would each week would unlock another weapon or some other thing, which would make doing whatever you're doing there easier. I only did it a couple times. I did not enjoy it. I didn't like. I thought the mech thing was cool, but I didn't like that I knew that it was going to get better in a few weeks.
Hmm.
And so I just didn't care. And then I never went back. And so I never got to finish it. But it
Yeah,
was inconsequential. So
yeah, I'm the same way. It just really wasn't much of anything, and I actually didn't know what you said, that it was originally meant for Battle for Azeroth, but knowing that now, I can definitely see it, especially because
the
um,
Azurite.
yeah, wasn't just that, but I don't know if you've ever done the island expeditions.
Oh,
Whenever,
okay. I didn't, but that is actually what I heard.
yeah,
Was that this was supposed to be an island expedition.
Yeah, that's whenever you said that, I was like, oh yeah, I can see it would have been one of those. Um, and ultimately, yeah, that's what it felt like, something that you could do maybe 10 or 15 minutes and call it a day, you know. Um, I'd have to agree with uh, sort of everybody else, in including you, that it just wasn't there, you know.
Yeah, I think we could have skipped the Siren Isle as content and nobody would have been mad. Like I don't know that anybody would have complained about not having enough to do. I think we would have been fine.
Hmm.
But I think that Blizzard is making maybe taking some notes on that, where maybe there's not some strict adherence to some schedule that they had already pre-planned, because they've actually done a really good job of staying on schedule for the content that they've promised. But when it comes to like filler content, like main content, great. The seasonal content and the raid bosses and all those are great. But when they're throwing filler content at us, I would much rather not have it than have something lackluster. I want an experience, and I'll just and the patch cycles, the season cycles are so quick now. If we don't get filler content, I'm okay.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think you hit the nail on the head.
Speaking of filler content, the disc belt. It came
Uh,
in patch 11.1.7, and the disc belt is an acronym. It stood for Durable Information Securing Container, and this kind of played off of the if you had done some of the weekly quests in the beginning of the War Within, you're able to follow. I forget his name, but he's like the nephew of the Dwarven King.
Dagran.
Dagran. So you get to hang out with him and one of the Earth, and they're kind of going over the archive. And each week you get a little bit more story, and you can kind of get some like Titan lore from there. The Dispel was supposed to sort of play off of some of the power that you would have unlocked from that storyline. Like it was kind of an extension of that storyline, it seemed. But the controversy with this one was that it took the place of the Nitro Boost, which is an engineering equipment sort of feature, right? It's basically an enchantment that engineers have, and it's from Wrath of the Lich King, and so it's really old, but it's never been in any way like removed from the game or something, right? And it's a really powerful spell for players who don't have a lot of mobility with their class, and there are some classes that really suffer from it. I think DKs are one of them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's some classes that just really you might have one, but that's it. Having one isn't really that great. So it's really nice to have another option for mobility. And the disc belt had positioned itself to be very desirable, almost to the point that you would be handicapping yourself if you didn't use it. And I accepted that handicap with pride. I hated it.
Yeah, it was a really poor decision for them to make it so that if you were activating your engineering belt, it would, do the same thing as activating the disc belt. I mean, honestly, they could have put it on, say, a ring.
Anything else?
Yeah,
Anything else?
anything else.
Yeah.
And then you could use that like normal. And That being said, I think the idea of putting the power through something like delves was actually a really good idea. So, where we saw the Siren Isles as something that could be completed within 15 minutes for the day or even arguably the week, and then you get some piece of power that would go away relatively quickly. The disc belt not only stayed around, but you were doing content that you actually wanted to do. And for people who maybe weren't raid geared, I think it probably represented at least somewhat of a challenge going through the overcharged versions of the delves, um, and getting it on and all. Again, really great idea, really simple. You just basically did what you normally did, maybe with the extra challenge of the extra damage from the mobs and everything. Um, but yeah, I think overall it was good. Just Blizzard, in the future, don't do it on the belt again. Put it on something you're not going to use, like a ring or make it an item or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, a trinket. You can always make it a trinket. There's nobody that's stopping you. But a lot of
Right.
players do look for significant power in trinkets, season to season. So that would probably be controversial as well. So don't take any advice from me. um,
except to keep it off the belt.
yeah, Jesus, yeah, not again. Um, so another controversy that really it kind of silenced almost everything else about what was happening with World of Warcraft through I think like the beginning of the first half of season 3 and almost to the end. But I remember it's the add-on Apocalypse really just dominated the conversation. Everybody wanted to talk about it. Everybody wanted to be upset about it. Everybody had their opinions about it. And it was even the podcasts, like some of the podcasts that I listened to that cover World of Warcraft, they kept bringing it up and they kept having opinions and they were very upset. And I understand that certain people were upset about certain parts of the game being possibly inaccessible to them because things like GTFO were definitely not going to be working, right? I believe it's working right now in a very limited capacity. And so there were a lot of worries that players had, but once we had gotten to see how it worked out and see the cooldown manager and see everything in the beta and having all that information released, I think a lot of players felt a lot better about the add-on Apocalypse, which was internally called add-on Disarmament, and which also sounds just as bad. That was an internal thing for Blizzard.
Right.
Um, but so the changes that they had made were that combat data became secret values, and you can pass secret values around, but you can't see the secret values. And this disallowed computation to happen. And what was happening with quite a bit of the add-on space was, especially in terms of like pushing competitive content. So if you're in Mythic Plus, it basically means that if you want to cooperate with your team and do a good job, you have to go get these add-ons. In terms of add-ons, I've never adhered to that. I've never listened to anybody who's told me to download DBM because I just learned the fights, and I just enjoy being able to see the screen and be in the game much, much more. And I think that add-ons, the more help that players are looking to get, you could get so many things that help you, but they just take away from your screen. And you're not, I never really felt like I was able to play the game with any one of those, much less several of them. And one of them being weak auras that had gone away, which uh, actually people had found that there was a 50 to 70 FPS loss documented for just the performance of weak auras. It was a CPU hog, and a lot of the animations were tied to frames, so everything had to get processed sequentially before the next frame ran. So yeah, 50 to 70 frames. I actually thought it was on my computer it was more like 30, but still, but in overall, in general, a lot of players out there are, I think, feeling relief now that they don't have these poorly written scripts because WeakOrs was a well-written add-on, but it enabled poorly written scripts, and I think that was a huge issue that a lot of people just dealt with. And LVUI even paused their development for a little while, and then they definitely reduced the features on what they were doing, and they came back. So there was just a lot of crazy things that came with that. They also did a talent rework with all of the players at the same time, and it came with the same patch. So it was almost like a whole new experience, and that also came with simultaneous debuffs, right? Like to everything, damage across the board for raids, Mythic Plus, everything. So players felt really powerful in this late stage of season 3. So it's just really interesting how it all played out in the end. So for you, how did the add-on development or ugh, I'm gonna start that question over. I fucked that whole thing up. How add-on dependent were you before the add-on apocalypse? And what was your first reaction when you heard that this was gonna happen?
For me, that's a good question on how dependent I was. Um, I would say if you would look at my UI now versus what it was then, you wouldn't really see much of a difference. For me, I um, really only used weak auras for a few things. First of all, was to assist with DBM and certain boss fights, just as we all did. But the second one was really only for little weak auras that like I made myself. The biggest one that I'm still hurts is the way I tracked Holy Power, which was with two semicircles, one on the left, one on the right, that would fill up and change color. Um, that really made it easy for me to track. I'm still debating whether making my own add-on, if possible, to track that and recreate it. But really, the only other add-ons that I had was like Trade Skill Master for auctions, and just little bits and bobs. If you would take a look at the top of my screen at any night, I track like how many FPS they currently have, a few different like uh, little launchers to things like TSM, a little tracker that says if I have mail and how much gold I currently have on my character. And so, really, I didn't really rely on them as much as one would think. It was more about skinning the UI versus, really um, modifying it to, do this or that, or really um, uh, changing how I played. That
So
being
you weren't
said,
using the computational features of weak auras, which is what
no,
got banned.
right, right. So, and you know, again, there was a few boss fights, but we weren't using like God have mercy if you had to download the liquid weak auras for the entire
Oh,
raid.
oh,
I mean,
yeah, it was
I mean,
bad.
even just loading that, and I have a my processor is a Ryzen 9 7950 X3D.
Yeah.
So it was top of the line about a year and a half, 2 years ago. And even just loading that on this computer, top of the line, had to take what, 20 seconds, like to
While,
import it.
yeah,
And
it took
then
a while.
yeah, it's was just insane. I mean, hats off to the Team Liquid for, you know making them and sharing them, but
Yeah.
it's just so complex and just so just heavy. But there was a time I was really worried about the on apocalypse because what Blizzard initially said was we're going to stop weak auras, and then as we get further both into midnight and then the next expansion, we're going to taper back more. Instead, what they did was they said they were only going to do weak auras, but then decided to just pull the whole trigger all at once. So there was a period of time where I, as well as a lot of the add-on developers, more so them, were really caught off guard, and didn't really know what to make of this. And so Blizzard, to their credit, really did um, fix a lot of that. As you mentioned, LVUI even restarted, where they once said that they were going to either have to stop development or had already stopped. Um, and so they really did pick up the pace in including adding those secret values and everything. And so I think it actually did and has been working out really well. It's just a matter of, you know, I just appreciate that we can still skin things, and we don't have
I
the
was
computation.
hoping that we would keep Uyghurs in some. It sucked that they basically threw a tantrum and said no because
Yeah, yeah,
to me, what that said was that the add-on developer primarily created the add-on to do the computational stuff, to make raid bosses easier, not to assist people in some way that's necessary because they have a disability or something, right? Or,
right.
you know, it's some sort of accessibility type of feature, like that was the priority for what they wanted. No, what they wanted was very specifically to do exactly what Blizzard was arguing against, and they were not shy about it. They were like, "This is exactly what I wanted. This is how I want to run it, and you don't want to let me do the computational stuff. I won't. I won't develop for this at all ever again." And I was a little taken back by that because a lot of the reason, like almost 100% of the reason I use WeakOrs is to edit my UI. It's just UI stuff, and it's so powerful for that. But because they did that, and because so many people were like you and me with the UI stuff, and then like people like Team Liquid and other people who wanted to push with their Mythic pluses and such and raids, they would do computational stuff, right? There was all those players. Um, ugh, I did it again. I forgot what I was saying.
No worries.
um, Oh, yeah, that's what I was saying. I'm gonna cut back into this. Okay, so there were a lot of players that had used it for one thing or the other, and getting rid of weak ores or weak ores just refusing to play the game anymore, right? Opened up the door for a bunch of brand new developers, people who have never written code before, getting in one way or the other, or never written a WoW item before. Maybe they're like a coder and they kind of know how to do it. And this is like the reason why they jumped into it because nobody else was going to turn their favorite weak aura into an add-on. And so many of the weak auras that were UI based and are still able to be functioning in the game now are add-ons.
Right, and we even saw, know, not just the cooldown manager, but Blizzard even implemented their own timeline, which was one of the most popular weak auras around. And that's another instance where me or you or anybody else, we were looking for a way to not just skin it, but it wasn't computational. It was just making it you know um, easier on our eyes, especially for me as a tank. I can't really see bars filling up constantly or emptying, and have an idea of the time left. And so, taking the initiative with that was really great. And they even have an add on for Blizzard's timeline that adds additional features. So, you know, um, like you said, it ended up working out not just to even the playing field, but to give others a chance to do things. And I think it's a real positive outcome at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think it's surprising that in the end it turned out to be even better than what Blizzard was trying to sell it as. Um, because a lot of people were like incredulous about the situation, I think, and did not really believe that they could pull it off. And even Ian had said that, you know, players don't think that we can pull this off, and rightly so, because they, you know, Blizzard has not given them examples of them being able to do that. But in the end, we have a lot of great add-ons now, you know, and performance is up, and the game is in a much better place. I think it's wonderful that it worked out the way that it did. Um, yeah, and so
Definitely.
that kind of brings us to sort of the wrap up of the seasons. And what I wanted to get into also is Microsoft's involvement in the war within. Um, First, we have, I believe, for Microsoft, the war within was the, or no, I believe it's Midnight is actually going to be their first expansion where they've like fully been a part of it because the acquisition happened a month before the War Within launched.
Right.
So they didn't have any meaningful impact on the War Within as it launched. Plenty of things are still in development, right? But they're all kind of set in stone, and I don't know that Microsoft really made much of a difference in terms of how this expansion played out. But the next expansion is something that they would have had a lot of influence on, and so we'll definitely be talking about that on the next podcast when we cover Midnight. But yes, the speaking of the acquisition, it was the largest gaming deal ever recorded, and um, or the largest gaming acquisition, I believe, ever recorded. I believe they like also scaled that up and down for like values and such like in years prior. So 75.4 billion is a lot, and that's billion with a B. So, but it was for all of acquisition or all of Activision. So it wasn't just Blizzard, but Blizzard is like a huge part of that pie, and it's a big reason why Activision was profitable, and now adds a really nice profit margin um, to Microsoft's uh, quarterly quarterly reports. They also some news that is definitely going to affect us because we fall within the realm of um, Microsoft gaming now that we're all under Microsoft. So Phil Spencer, who for Xbox was the community really believed he was the best leader that they could ever have. And he was seen as like a real gamer. He had a gamer tag for a really long time, and he's always like tweeting and stuff and being online and talking about the experiences. He spearheaded a lot of things like backwards compatibility for Xboxes and such. And so having Phil Spencer retire has made a lot of the gaming community in general very nervous because he was such a champion for the common gamer, what the common family would need from a console in their home, price points, hardware like deals. Phil Spencer did a lot, and I believe he had something to do with Blizzard's restarting in the like right before the War Within, like where they like jumped in, and like he had like helped out with that deal in some way or another. But to replace him, we have Asha Sharma, and she's the new CEO now. She is CEO of Microsoft Gaming. She's born in '89, so she's about my age. um, she doesn't have any gaming industry experience. This is where people are worried about what may be coming. She has AI tech background, and her her LinkedIn will show you that she's worked for Microsoft marketing. She worked at Porch Group. She was the VP at Meta. I believe is for their Messenger division. She was COO at Instacart. Then she came back to Microsoft for their core AI department, and she went from there to here to the Microsoft Gaming. And I think what should be taken out of this decision, especially considering that Matt Booty was promoted to basically second in command with her. He's had a really great track record, and he's done a lot for the community in terms of like the quality that they've delivered for Microsoft Gaming. And he's been promoted to EVP and Chief Content Officer under Asha Sharma. And I believe what we should take from this is that Asha is here to scale up Microsoft Gaming. And you can almost see the threads of what she would be doing during this acquisition when you hear Holly talk about doing something more with World of Warcraft than just a video game, right? Because that's scaling. And while the last job that she had was Microsoft Core AI. That has not been her focus like the entire time throughout her career. But what she has focused on is scaling systems up. And she's done a consistently good job with that. So if we're looking at what her expertise is and what we should be expecting from just Microsoft in general, is that the gaming section is going to be scaled up and expanded much more. And I even think we might even be seeing some new studios or some new IPs or taking, like taking risks with games and such. So we're really excited about a new CEO. But I know a lot of people might not feel the same.
Yeah, the bigger, I would argue, the bigger question mark, and whenever this had the announcement happened, I read into it on The Verge, and the first thing that was interesting was apparently the announcement that he was leaving was actually rushed because IGN had gotten wind of it early on and was just about to run the story right before Phil Spencer announced it and Microsoft at large. However, the more interesting story was the fact that Xbox President Sarah Bond also left, and Sarah Bond was working under Phil Spencer, obviously the CEO at Microsoft Gaming, but she was being positioned as Phil Spencer's successor. And there seemed to be some sort of um, division between what Phil Spencer's plan was versus what has been going on with Xbox at large in terms of um, money and advertising. And this is also an Xbox. This is an Xbox, even though it's a PC type
Yeah,
of thing.
yes.
Um, that being said, um, what I think what you're saying is 100% true in that I think what Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella is wanting is that scaling up, and not necessarily in a negative way. I mean, we could be here all day with what ifs or anything, but at the very least, we know that uh, Sharma has been rather vocal ever since getting the promotion on Twitter, and even asking, people on Twitter, what game should she try, and that she's not here basically saying that she was always a gamer and then trying to sort of fake it till she makes it. She seems to be more open and honest about that fact. I'm hopeful that we see Xbox come back to its own. And not just Xbox, but like, for example, Bethesda, Microsoft owns. And There's a few other gaming studios that are under their purview, and hopefully we see more games being released, and yeah, it's an interesting shakeup too. I forget how long. I think he Phil Spencer was been there for what, more than 30 years, like not necessarily Xbox,
Oh,
of course.
38 years. He started as
38.
an intern.
That's so crazy.
Yeah, he
um
started. He was in Xbox since 2001, and he became the head of Xbox in 2014.
Man. And like you said, Matt Booty getting promoted is good as well. But yeah, the losing Phil Spencer as CEO, I can say I was never really an Xbox fan, but he was, someone that had a vision, and had a lot of respect for his guardianship over Xbox, and even the Activision Blizzard deal.
Yeah, I think I found out a lot about Phil Spencer when looking some of this stuff up because I heard about it, but it was really just the article. I didn't really know much about him, but looking it up, it is very clear that he was a champion for the gaming community, which was really refreshing to see that. But also, As you were mentioning, Sharma has been really vocal about where she is with gaming and such, and how what she's representing for the company and as herself. She did make sure to sort of reassure people that she the AI stuff wasn't going to be just imposed on everything. And a quote from her: "We will not chase short-term efficiency or flood our ecosystem with soulless AI slop." And that was a promise that she made as the CEO and as the person who's able to make that decision. So I'm hoping that they stick to that. But that being said, there is some scaling up of AI systems in certain parts of Microsoft just in general, security being one of those. And I bring that up because I saw a recent story. It had hit Reddit. A player was banned, and they had received the message that they were banned, and they received the message that they were banned for the reason that their Death Knight minion was named Bone Gobbler. That
Right,
is not up to the player. You can keep the name by using some auction house item, um, I think for a limited time, or and then there's anytime you summon it, it just kind of generates from a pool, and so whatever automated system that they started using, which I think has something to do with AI, would just sort of reason through like keywords and such and not really understand the limitation of like what's flagged as user created content or something that programmatically comes from their side. And so it was really funny to see something like that. But when I saw it, my immediate thought was, oh, this must have something to do. And perhaps it does, perhaps it doesn't. But I think it sort of might have something to do with pushing AI into security automation, which I think should be the last thing you push AI into.
yeah, and arguably, we shouldn't be shoving AI into everything anyway. But yeah, especially things like moderation and uh, just overseeing things. I'm hopeful that Microsoft, understands this, especially with the pushback they've gotten for Windows. But it is good to see and to hear that she seems to understand a little bit about our fears of what it could be.
Yeah,
And,
definitely.
and yes, let's put a little more intelligence to our bands, please. You know.
Yeah. So we're gonna at last the final item we got here is BlizzCon, and we spoke about that earlier. We had the last BlizzCon was a 2023. It was actually $300 for the ticket. For that one, I believe it was about that much, and maybe a little bit less for a discounted version this time. But that was the first time that BlizzCon didn't sell out, like the first time ever. So that was a little weird. And maybe it had something to do with the ticket price because I think that was also the most expensive tickets had ever been. Then maybe it had something to do with not selling out, but 2024 was canceled. But then when 2025 was canceled, also it was simultaneously announced with the 2026 BlizzCon coming. And again, like we had mentioned earlier, this is also the first time Blizzard had skipped 2 years of BlizzCon. But I think what we can take from this is that Microsoft recognizes that maybe losing money on BlizzCon, as Blizzard has always said, is worth it for buying player goodwill.
Yeah, and even just having the ability to, you know, go to because it's not just a place, and it's the community, it's the people, even being able to directly ask questions um, to the developers. It's a very special thing, I think.
The
You know,
cosplay
definitely the
competition,
cosplay.
always
Yeah,
loved that.
I mean,
You
I wish I could go to BlizzCon one of these days. One of these days maybe, but just like the amount of
Oh, so you're not
attention
going
to
to
detail.
2026 BlizzCon?
I wish I could, but I am a
Ugh.
poor man in Pittsburgh. So, um,
Thankfully, I
um,
live in the same state.
nice. Yes. For those who are just joining us, not part of the guild, I was able to attend AGDQ here in Pittsburgh
Oh,
back in
nice.
January. Um, but that is $100 ticket and was about 15 minutes from my apartment. So um,
Mhm.
it is not across the entire country and
Yeah.
an expensive ticket. But that being said, the amount of detail and just the incredible work that the cosplayers do is always just a marvel to be held. And so, yeah, and I just hope that it's not just Microsoft, or how do I put it? It's not just the higher ups in, say, the division, say Bethesda, or the rest of the people in Activision Blizzard, but it gets all the way up to even Satya Nadella, that these things are not only important for their bottom line, but ultimately it's more important for the people who actually play the games, buy the games, and that we like to do this, and it's a hobby we enjoy.
Yeah, I think if somebody goes to Satya, the only thing they need to do is show him the line item where there's a negative for any given BlizzCon, and then show him the line item where there's the positive from all of the Brutosaur mounts that they sold for $90 on the store in one day.
Yeah,
And he'll go, "Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm on board." Because
exactly,
Blizzard
exactly.
is World of Warcraft is in a really good place for monetization. We've been losing subscribers for a while, but the War Within was like one of the most popular expansions in a very long time. I think they almost got up to like 10 million active users. So
Wow.
we're headed for. I think we're headed for the best days of WoW, which is
Ye-
really exciting.
and it's also crazy, we've been playing this game, whether um, we've been playing constantly or off and on, for 20 plus years, and incredibly, it's actually arguably, and I believe, as well as you just said, that it is getting better, and that the days our better days are indeed ahead.
Yeah, yeah, they're definitely looking looking forward to the next 20 years, just like Metzen had said.
And I think we have, and not just we, I should say, I think they do have an idea of where that's going to take us, um, and when we get to the discussion of Midnight podcast, I'm sure the recreation of Northrend is going to get brought up, because and I think a lot of us are really looking forward to that.
Yeah, they've been seeding a lot of that information, so we're really excited. I think we're going to get a lot of that at BlizzCon this year, which I will be attending. So that's
Nice.
that's going to be exciting. Um, okay, so wanted to move into our support and socials section just to sort of cap this off. Um, for our Patreon, before we go, if you want to support the show, the best way is through our Patreon. Every bit helps us pay the bills, hosting fees and such, anything that has to do with the podcast, and improve production. Be that mics or equipment or anything like that. Um, if you don't have any money, do not worry about that. Our free support actions include just rating and reviewing on Spotify or Apple. If you're on YouTube, subscribe, leave a comment. If you leave a comment on any of the platforms, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, we do read all of those comments. Love to see them. We respond to them, whenever we can, and it's really, really fun to see people engage with that. So please feel free to do it. It's a big help for us, and we are Last Attempt Pod at X, formerly known as Twitter. We have a little Discord link in the description. Wait, I'm gonna start that over. We are at Last Attempt Pod on X, formerly known as Twitter, on Instagram and TikTok. and YouTube. And we also have a Discord. The link will be in the description. I personally have a Twitch. That would be twitch.tv/squirrelthug underscore. And I stream Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Usually stream our raid nights. Going forward, I'll probably be doing midnight content until raids open up again. And yeah, that's where you guys can find me. And Templar, where can these lucky people find you?
Um, Whoopsie doodle. In case anybody wants a reminder, I do use a USB foot pedal, and my foot does slip every once in a while. They can find me just at twitch.tv/Templrivanho, and that's spelled TEMPLRIVANHO. And I too just stream our raids whenever we do them. Unfortunately, I don't really have a second monitor currently set up so I can really talk into the chat. But if you want to come hang out, you can either see Squirrelthug's Twitch or mine. I think you're changing to a rogue, correct?
Yes, I think on midnight I'm gonna pull the rogue out and give that a shot. If I don't hit enough DPS, I'm just going back to resto.
Gotcha. So for Squirrel Thug, you get the either the DPS or healing perspective. For me, it'll be the tanking. And yeah, if you want to come watch, uh, uh, leave a comment in the chat. I will try to see it, but until I can get that second monitor, if I don't see it, I apologize.
Oh, actually, you know what? I'm gonna send you a link. There's something I have that it will just text to speech your chat. It's really nice.
Ah, okay.
It just sucks when somebody's username is like a string of letters and numbers.
Yeah, that'd be great.
All right, and so that's going to be our wrap up for the War Within, our retrospective look at this last expansion. And thank you for coming on this journey with us. It was a lot of fun. Thank you, Templar, for doing this with me. This was a great deal of fun to be able to talk with somebody about this last expansion, which I think really holds up with some of the greats.
Yeah, and as always, it's just like you said, have a lot of fun coming on here and just uh, talking about things and hanging out, and hopefully people like it as well.
All right, and that'll wrap it up for us. Thank you. See ya.
Later's.